Hey, everybody, it's Adnan Burke from ESPN, and you're listening to two of my favorites, Graham and Chris, Out of Left Field, right now.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field, a sad day for many reasons today. Graham and Chris here with you. Obviously, before we get talking about the baseball season, all of us here at the Grueling Truth, our hearts go out to the victims and their families and everybody affected by what happened in Las Vegas. Obviously, almost 600 people were injured or unfortunately lost their lives in the events. It's weird, man. I was thinking about this, and they said this was the largest mass shooting in American history, which takes the title, unfortunately, away from Orlando, or modern American history. But it takes the title away from Orlando, and that was about the fifth week of our show. You were in England, and I remember asking kind of what was going on over there. Had you heard just a really rough way to start the morning? So again, all of us, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We hope that if you do know anybody that was there, if they're injured, that they are okay, and if not, our deepest condolences out there for you. That obviously puts a bit of a damper on the opening, and obviously the sadness that I speak of on a separate term is not nearly as important, but it is the end of the Major League Baseball regular season. So let's put the ball in play, try and kind of get you guys going, because obviously you're listening to the show for some baseball enjoyment and to try and get away from what's happening in the real world. So we want to do that for you, and we've got plenty to get to today. Obviously, our end of the end of the season standings. What's going to happen in the off season? We got plenty of off season moves. Joey Batista, Terry Collins is going to stay with the Mets, but not the skipper, and Matt Cain to retire. On top of that, the Atlanta Braves, a organization we've talked about tremendously a ton of times here. A group I grew up watching. They are in major hot water with Major League Baseball, plus everything postseason, including our end-of-season award predictions. We were, I believe, 7 out of 8 last year, and that was just the NL Manager of the Year that we were off on. We had Adnan Burke on the show after, who gave us a massive amount of grief for our Rick Porcello Cy Young pick. And booyah, we got that one right, so we're going to see if we can go ahead and shoot perfect bat 1,000 on those this year. So as we go, Chris Furry, the standings are in. The season is over. It is a unfortunate day for us because that means now we're really on the tail end of baseball. Baseball is probably halfway down the third baseline, and it's not going to pull a Ryan Braun and face plant heading towards home for inside the park home run. So it's going to reach home in the next month. And with that, everything that we pretty much saw coming down the pike the last month or two is in play. The Red Sox and Yankees both go into the postseason. The Red Sox go ahead and win that division by only 2 games. Did not have the same separation we expected. The Indians become one of 3 100-win teams at 102, the best record in the American League. The Astros right behind them at 101. Who would have thought the Astros, the way they began, would have not taken the best record in the AL or even baseball for that matter? We'll see how much that plays into them in the postseason. The Nationals win the East, which was a foregone conclusion from opening day. I mean, let's just call it what it is. The Cubs go ahead. They win the Central by 6 games. The Brewers, unfortunately, miss out by 1 game on the wild card. And then 3 teams out of the West, the Dodgers with 104 wins, the best record in all of baseball, the Diamondbacks, and the Rockies, all 3 going to the postseason. The crazy thing here, Chris, the first time in baseball history 3 teams have won 100 games, and one of those teams is not wearing the pinstripes of the New York Yankees.
Yeah, which is interesting. I don't think anybody expected the Yankees to be a 100-win team this year. In fact, I don't think, if I recall our preseason shows, we didn't expect the Yankees to do anything this year.
We picked 3 teams out of the AL East to make the playoffs. The problem is 2 of those teams are, on the bottom of the AL East standings. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the here and now, not about April, not happening.
But I don't think any of us, even as many as 3 weeks ago, I don't think either of us really thought that there were going to be teams, because remember, the Dodgers were in the middle of that huge stall, and it was prior to the Cleveland Indians going on that huge tear, and we're sitting there in sort of this limbo, and we're thinking, well, is anybody going to get to 100 wins this year? And I think we said that 3 or 4 times. Is anybody going to get to 100 wins this year? And the Dodgers were going to pull out of that thing. They were at 92 wins when we were having that conversation. And we figured they could probably put together 8 more wins with the 30 or so games that they had left. But I don't think either of us predicted that that Cleveland was going to win 102 games this year, because they certainly didn't like it.
That might have been our overreaction show of the year. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Houston, I think at the beginning of the year, we very much expected them to be a 100-win team towards the middle of the season. Still, I think we expect them to be in the high 90s, low 100s. But going into August, I just didn't feel it from them. I didn't think that.
Is it weird for me to say that it feels like a team that won 101 games and won their division by 21 limped its way into the playoffs?
No, I think that's absolutely fair.
Crazy, but I mean, the way they played, it was head scratching.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fair. They did limp their way into the postseason. The only reason, really, that the Angels didn't have an opportunity to catch them is because the Angels had a rough start to their year, and the Astros just took off. Remember, they were the first to 10, first to 20, first to 30, first to 40. And it wasn't until we get to 50 wins that the Dodgers caught up and were able to overtake them. But even then, the Dodgers were on tear. So
which is right about the time that McCullers and Keuchel began to have the injury bug.
Right. That huge start where they got nearly half of their wins out of the way in the first 60 games.
Right.
They couldn't put together – they had trouble putting together another 50 or 51 wins in their following 100 games.
Right.
So the problem there is absolutely they limped into the postseason because they started off playing 800 baseball and ended the season playing 500 baseball. When you average the 2 out, you get that 620, 630 season. But what does that mean for the postseason? Where does that put them in terms of how well they're going to do going into the postseason?
I don't think they're as bad as we think. Because obviously in the middle of the season you have McCullers out, Keuchel out. Verlander wasn't here yet. Correa was out for a good chunk of time. You mentioned the Angels, who finished 2 games below 500. Trout was out for a good 2 months. I think the Astros are still in a good spot. And obviously they are going to face the Red Sox. And we're going to get into our predictions here in just a little bit. That to me, really any series where the Astros are going to be, to me, really, it piques my interest because we've seen what they can do, and we saw how they finished, but they also finished 8-2 in their last 10 to go ahead and come into the postseason. So, everybody's pretty much back. They're healthy. We know that that at least for now is a possibility. David Price may come out of the bullpen for the Red Sox, which will be interesting. The team that really kind of disheartened me at the end of it, the Tampa Bay Rays. They finished at the same record as the Angels, 80-82, 13 games out of the AL East, 5 out of the wild card, a team that I picked to go ahead and stay solid and make it into the postseason. And I was wrong, and the Twins still managed to go ahead and do it, and they get to face the Yankees in Yankee Stadium for the wild card game tomorrow.
And I don't think you're the only one. I don't think I'm the only one who watched baseball this season and then towards the end of the season went, who the hell are the Twins and where the hell did they come from?
Right, exactly.
So here's something that I want to say just really quickly on the subject of Houston that I think is heartening for them going into the playoffs. Because despite the injuries and the lull and that kind of losing streak that they went on, they did manage to do something that only one other team in the league managed to do this season. And
have
that
Justin
was
Verlander pitch for them?
No. Although that is true. No. They're one of only two teams in Major League Baseball who kept their road losses below 30. And the other team is not the Dodgers. The other team is actually the Cleveland Indians, who the Houston Astros mirror a road record with at 53-28. The only two teams that stay under 30 losses, which is really good going into the postseason, assuming they get past Boston in the divisional round. Going into the NLC, if Cleveland has to get past the wild card, but assuming Cleveland and Houston both go into the NLCS, which I think they're the favorites at this point, that's good for Houston because they have that ability to win on the road. However, so do the Cleveland Indians. In fact, the same ability to win on the road, which in my opinion has been key to both teams' success this year, was the ability to win road games.
Right. And to your point, the Nationals were 50-31 on the road. So still a pretty solid. Actually, were hardly better on the road than they were at home. 47-34 at home for the Nationals. So, my biggest hope out of this is that I hope this doesn't discourage the Rays front office from continually trying to be buyers at the deadline when they have a chance. Now, granted, they get Hechavarria. They didn't do much besides that. Lucas Duda was there. The wheels kind of just came off a little bit, and I hope they don't start trying to sell off pieces. But I did like seeing them go ahead and make that push, and I certainly hope that they are willing to continue trying that when they're in that position, which I think where they are right now is still there. I don't know if Kevin Cash is going to eventually be the manager to take them to that point. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat by any means, but if we begin to see things where they're right on the cusp and just don't get it, it might be kind of like the Nationals when they moved on from Matt Williams, that it may be a time, in the next 2-3 seasons that Kevin Cash might just not be the guy to give you that next step. As we said, the Nationals, Cubs, Dodgers win their divisions. The Diamondbacks and the Rockies will play in the NL wild card game, I believe, on Wednesday. And we'll get to all that here in just a minute. This is Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham. Find us at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Of course, we're part of the Grueling Truth Network at Grueling Truth on Twitter and the gruelingtruth.net. A ton of good articles on there right now, guys. Tons of stuff with football happening, college football, fantasy picks, everything you're looking for, plus all your good boxing stuff. Any other sports you're feeling, we got the courtroom now, a great NBA themed kind of debate show, a little bit of First Take meets All Hardwood is going on. So be sure to check that out. Plenty of good stuff coming your way. As we move on from the standings and get into what's going to happen this offseason, as for a good chunk of teams, the offseason has begun. And surprisingly, unlike the NFL, there really isn't a Black Monday, in baseball, where you're seeing a bunch of managers get shifted. We have heard a couple of things with managers, mainly being that Bob Melvin of the Oakland A's and Mike Scioscia of the Los Angeles Angels are going to be with their team. Scioscia's last year option for his 10-year deal was picked up by the Angels, and Melvin was extended. But the big one here for me, and I think Scioscia, we discussed at length of why this season was big for him, but the odd one is that Terry Collins of the Mets is going to the front office for the organization, will resign his position as manager, and now the Mets are looking for a new person to lead them while still keeping the same voice somewhere within that organization. It kind of surprised me when I saw it, and I think I got kind of a similar reaction from you.
Yeah, I was shocked, actually, because you had messaged me and said that the Mets might be looking for a new manager, and that immediately was sort of shocking to me because I didn't think that despite having a bad season, which you can probably, blame on players not talking about injuries and Noah Syndergaard going down and then Matt Harvey going down and their issues on the mound. But Terry Collins is not the kind of guy that you think, oh, well, he's on the hot seat, despite a bad season. Terry Collins is a fantastic manager, does a great job, but it's interesting to me. What's interesting to me is going to be to see how involved Terry Collins is in finding his own replacement, and more importantly, whether or not this move is something Terry Collins did because he thinks that he needs to step down and let a younger manager step in, or B, needs to step down because the Mets need different leadership. Not better leadership, just different leadership. Because that can be an issue too. If he creates a culture in the Mets where players don't feel comfortable coming to him and telling him, hey, I don't know if I can go today, or hey, I've got this twinge, should I sit? If Terry Collins isn't the kind of manager you can come up and say that sort of thing to, has he realized that or been made aware of that and now decided, oh, maybe I would be more effective in another role?
Yeah, and the more I look into this story, really the odd thing here is that it looks like the Mets owner, Fred Wilpon, intervened last season when it appeared that Terry Collins was apparently on the brink of being fired. Now, they went on and made the wild card appearance, which helped Terry Collins out. But really, from a lot of from a lot of sources are saying that really Collins lost favor with the front office due to, quote, a lack of responsiveness to analytics, his overworking of multiple relievers in a clubhouse in which he's lost control. Here's what I guess it has to make you concerned. If there is a supposed loss of favor with some of the Mets front office personnel and even some players with him, why are you keeping him in your front office at all? I think that I don't think it was as surprising that Collins was going to go. This season was not his fault, but I think that, like you said, and the way that you phrase that, I think is really what makes it so important. Is that was there a concern of culture in the clubhouse to why guys weren't being as open with him as when they were, maybe with another manager, or did the way that he handled those players play a part in them, in the injuries? Some of them obviously aren't his fault, but how much of it was they just weren't comfortable saying anything? I think it's a good point, a good question, and one that we obviously won't know, but I am surprised to see Terry Collins moving into a front office role if those reports are true. As we said, Bob Melvin and Mike Scioscia each get a one-year option for Scioscia, a one-year extension for Bob Melvin. I don't know how much longer. Melvin's been in the same club for 14 years. I don't know how much longer he's going to stay there, but he's a guy who he's not being put in the best possible position to win. Obviously, it's Moneyball Central, and nothing there is really going to, he's not going to be managing a World Series contender, especially not perennial anytime soon in Oakland.
I have a question, because you brought up the Moneyball thing, and this is something that's kind of burning on my mind, and I wanted to talk to you about this and Bob Melvin. Is the time when the Moneyball sabermetrics mode is going to take the league by storm like they did in 2001, is that over? Or has baseball caught up to that? Are we done? Yes, sabermetrics is a tool, but now everybody's using it, so it's, again, you're in this position where teams are more evenly distributed as far as who their producers are, what their on-base percentages look like.
To me, at this point, we're back to it being the farm system as being the main way, and I don't really think it ever fully got away from that. hence why the Red Sox came to prominence in 03 and 04 because of what Theo Epstein did, why the Cubs are so good now.
But remember,
we're seeing teams that
Theo Epstein is a guy who bought hook, line, and sinker into what Billy Beane did in Oakland in 2001. He was hugely into what Billy Beane did in Oakland in 2001. In fact, so was the previous general manager of the Boston Red Sox. Both of them were in agreement that the idea of sabermetrics, the idea of this Moneyball situation was what gave them that success. In fact, they offered Billy Beane a huge sum of money to come to Boston. He turned it down.
But to me, the difference is that Theo Epstein and other GMs, like, for example, and I don't know the GM's name, I'm sorry, of the Giants, but the way that those guys went ahead and did this is...
The former one, Nick Saban, the one that won all the World Series?
Right.
Nick Saban.
Yeah. Nick who?
No, I'm sorry. Brian Saban.
Oh, I'm like, he coaches at
Nick
Alabama.
Saban he's the Alabama coach. Brian Saban, Nick Saban.
But what to me is they were never scared to spend money. Now, they didn't spend money foolishly like with Pablo Sandoval, but those clubs were willing to go ahead and get guys like Poppy, like Dustin Pedroia. They went out and grabbed Josh Beckett. They were willing to spend a good sum of cash when it was necessary to keep a team intact, which is why the Red Sox were relevant for so long, unlike the A's, who were kind of like the Marlins were when they won 2 World Series, then dumped everybody back off because they were too cheap to pay them. I'm not saying that it's apples to apples, but that's the way. I think that the problem is Billy Beane wants to get everybody for cheap and then try and get a ring and then rebuild it. You've got to go ahead and at least at some point be willing to spend some cash for long-term people.
But it's not Billy Beane that's not willing to spend cash. It's the ownership that's not willing to spend cash because you have to realize that despite Oakland and San Francisco sharing a market, Oakland has a microscopic market share compared to San Francisco. So, despite the Bay Area being
for a ball
one of the
club
largest markets in the world,
to me, for a ball club that has your blood on their stadium, they should spend some extra cash.
That's true, I believe.
And that's well. So anyway, a little bit of fun there.
I didn't. I broke my nose in Candlestick Park. I didn't break my nose in the college.
Same thing. It's right across the water. When everything was shaking, it blew some blood over there. Just roll with it. Just roll with it. It was on a shovel they used when they did some work on the Coliseum, I'm sure.
So I guess that takes us into probably the most surprising development in management in baseball this very young offseason. And that is what's going on with the general manager in Atlanta. Because I don't think that what's going on in Atlanta is any less important than these guys getting extended. I mean,
without a doubt. No, I agree with you. Sorry, you threw me off because of all things, Matt Cain retired, and you kind of just skipped over. I couldn't believe you went to the Braves before finishing up. You what?
I don't like Matt Cain.
You don't like Matt Cain?
I like Matt Cain. You know what? I like Matt Cain, but he's retiring 3 years too late. And yeah, he did a great job. He's a great ball player, a great pitcher. He did a great job for the Giants. Led them to 2 World Series championships, assisted in a third, threw a perfect game. But in the long run, he is one of the problems. He refused to see his own weakness and really ruined the back end of that rotation for 2 years and were a huge part of the issue that the Giants had in their pitching staff. And the amount of money that they owed him was one of the reasons why they couldn't go out and get young guys to fill in those slots. So kudos to Matt Cain on a great career. I don't think he's bound for the baseball Hall of Fame. Obviously, his perfect game puts his name in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think he'll be inducted.
Right, and obviously, yeah, I think he'll be in the Giants' Ring of Honor or whatever they have at AT&T Park. And then lastly, real quick, because I know that we're both kind of salivating over this because we just everything is coming out so fast and furious over this Braves story. But Jose Bautista, it has been learned that the Blue Jays will not exercise their option for him. He will not return as a Blue Jay, but does plan to try and play next year, which I am very surprised at. I mean, everything has gone down for him really since he had those big, a couple of those big years, and then at the end of it ended up this year /203, 308, 366.
Yeah. Bye, Felicia.
All right, so let it be done. I think that pretty much says it all, I think.
I don't think that Joey Bats earned a position on a 2018 Major League roster this year. I think that he talked a huge game last year and it fell flat, and he talked a huge game in the off season and it fell flat. And he made a huge mistake not accepting the first offer the Blue Jays gave him, and then he turns around and turns in a Mendoza season. And then keep showing his rear end in games with bat flips and the Braves. And I mean, his attitude hasn't changed, but his production has. And when that begins to happen, that kind of personality grates very quickly on a baseball clubhouse. This is exactly the same thing that made. This is the exact same sort of attitude that made the end of Babe Ruth's career so horrific to watch. His production was way down. He couldn't hit the ball. He couldn't run. He couldn't do anything. And
what was that like watching it for you?
Well, it was hard to watch him descend into alcoholism like that. Well, descend into alcoholism is alcohol was his performance-enhancing drug, so he didn't descend into it. But
hot dogs and cigars were as well.
Right. It completely overtook him, and it got to the point where he couldn't even be an effective manager. He ended up managing some podunk team in the middle of nowhere as a player manager, and nobody wanted to play with him. Nobody wanted to play for him. It was terrible. And Joey Bats is really having that same sort of meltdown at the end of his career. His career is over. He can't produce. He can't hit. He can't get on base. And yet he still has the attitude that he's the greatest thing to grace baseball, and he never really was that.
Your history teacher mentality certainly came to light right there. Thank you for the big roundabout right there, but that was quite well done, and you bring it back. And at the end, I agree. I think we both have been kind of tired of the antics. We've seen him when the show began with the brawl, and then of course the bat flip was the season before, and nothing really has stopped.
I was tired of Joey Bats' attitude when he got punched in the face by Rougned Odor,
who also had a very poor season, but that's talk for much later down the road during the off season, which is fast approaching.
Explain to me what is going on in the ATL, because I don't understand. I don't understand the dynamic. I get it that there's been some impropriety of some sort, and the general manager stepped down. But beyond that, I don't know.
You've already said it. John Coppola, bye Felicia. Pretty much how it went. No, I mean, this story it's like I said, it's breaking like crazy. A guy who, we've had Chip Carey on a couple of times, announcer for the Atlanta Braves, and he spoke glowingly over John Coppola. Really expected, this guy was going to be the GM to to bring the Braves back into prominence, and now he's resigned, and he resigned because there is a very intense investigation happening by Major League Baseball. Braves President of Baseball Operations John Hart has said, quote, "Major League Baseball is investigating the matter with our full cooperation and support. We will not be issuing any further comment until the investigation is complete." So basically what happened here is we had a breach of Major League Baseball rules regarding the international player market. So obviously we know that there is an ability for teams to go out into the international pool to sign players to certain amounts of money at certain points in the year when they become free agents and are available for signing. What ended up happening here is that the Braves general manager is being accused of an impropriety in their ability or in their attempt to sign. They ended up being successful in signing a Venezuelan prospect named Kevin Maitan, a 17-year-old from Venezuela who was being compared to Chipper Jones, Miguel Cabrera, even Miguel Sano when he got signed. Was signed to a $4.25
million. A hell of a crowd of people
bonus.
to be compared to.
It is. I mean, but the problem here is that there is reports from agents that Coppola was contacting them several months before the free agent period, which is blatant tampering. And this is not as big as it is right now. Something very similar did happen with Boston a couple of years ago. The big thing here is that if Major League Baseball determines that improprieties occurred, then Maitan can become a free agent. So what the Braves think that they've gotten, which is right now a 17-year-old kid who, posted a respectable 241, 290, 340 average. Obviously, his on base isn't great, but 2 home runs and basically rookie ball. But he's a number 5 prospect in the Braves farm system, the 38th best young player in the game, according to some scouts. So it seems that Coppola not only went ahead and ignored some of the international regulations, but may also be disregarding domestic ones. Contacted agents wanting to discuss the player before the market opened in November. This has been an issue that has been he has drawn ire by his peers and compatriots, other general managers. And the big thing here is he signing is he signing these players, or is he offering them monetary additional monetary guarantees or gifts, compensation that goes well beyond the scope of what Major League Baseball offers. It's, I guess, the best way to put it is it's very similar to what's happening in college basketball, happening here in Major League Baseball, where money is allowed to be given, but they're giving either too much or trying to give more than what is permitted and doing it in a way that circumvents the rules by Major League Baseball. That is how I have been able to understand it.
Right, and so from what I've been able to glean from both from what we've discussed off the air and what I've been able to read is that it's very much like the NCAA situation. The difference being that, this is more stupid of Coppola than the difficulties that these NCAA coaches are having, because Coppola is enticing people with money that they were probably going to be able to get had he just waited through the few months of time period that it would have taken. Whereas NCAA players are going to play an entire season, an entire year of college basketball with absolutely no compensation of any kind. But Coppola is breaking the rules only months in advance of when everything that he's doing would probably be, if not completely on the up and up, at least more acceptable. And that's what doesn't make any sense to me. Why put your entire team, and from what we've discussed, it's not just his job, but it's the entire team that he's putting in jeopardy, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but these players become free agents if the MLB so chooses, right?
Correct. And if they determine that this was, done purposefully, yes, they can go ahead and declare these players free agents. And I'm not saying, obviously what he's trying to do is circumvent what happened to try and get these guys, on their team, but
no team can afford to lose a top 40 prospect over a stupid GM decision.
Right. And there are, and again, I know we talk about, it's always the anonymous source, but there were anonymous sources that even said that, when, it really had become a toxic environment, and that basically this is a quote from a high-ranking Braves official to Jeff Passan. He said, quote, "This place is totally bleeped up. I just hope when it blows up, it doesn't take all of us down." So let me ask you this.
I feel like
I want to ask you
the question I have to ask. He was promoted in 2015, right? Promoted to the GM position in 2015. It makes me wonder, because their activity in the international market has been huge over the last 2 or 3 years.
Right.
How long has this been going on in Atlanta? Is this something that taints the recruiting practices of guys like Felix Hernandez, or not Felix Hernandez, sorry, Jose Fernandez? Is this the type of thing that taints the recruiting practices of other strong international?
Well, I mean, Fernandez had defected and was, I think, in a high school in Tampa.
He was courted strongly by the Braves before he decided on Tampa Bay. I mean, before he decided on Miami.
Right, but my point is I don't believe that he was an international signing. I had to look.
Right,
I don't
right.
believe that he was.
He did play
I think
here.
I think the issue here, at least, kind of what gets me is, it's how far back now is this going to set, the Braves? And I think that's the question that you bring up is, yes, I believe that this is one of those things where, similar to what's happening in the NCAA, it happens to everybody. Everyone does it. It's just a matter of, not getting caught. But when you're so blatant about just trying to disrespect what the rules are, my biggest curiosity in all this, and we're going to see it play out, unfortunately, probably for the next several seasons, the Braves were supposed to finally be, kind of coming back into prominence in the NL East, at least to some point within the next season or two. With this being gone, and after what happened in the early to mid 2000s when they signed all these high-priced players, and it fell flat, how far back will this put the Atlanta Braves organization? That is what worries me, is because those fans, they're sick and tired of all the junk. They're sick and tired of the losing, and now the GM, who was supposed to be really focusing on building your franchise for the next 5, 10, hopefully more years, is gone because he just he can't follow simple rules.
Right, and the damaging thing there is that when you're so dependent on a guy who you think might have the ability to put together a team that wins, you probably don't, as an Atlanta Braves fan, you probably don't think that he's the second coming of Theo Epstein. But you think maybe he has the ability to put together a team that could take the National League East, or at least challenge the Washington Nationals at some point for that crown. And then you find out that everything he's doing is shady. It's like trusting in the GM of the Padres to make the right decisions, and then he's hiding injuries on trades. It's really the same sort of feeling, right? Because you're like, oh, he's doing all these trades, he's making all these trades, we're going to get these good guys back, and it's going to help us out. Oh, wait, he lied, and it's going to hurt us.
Right, exactly. And that's where, and maybe this is part of it because, we're really in the age of social media now where everything kind of gets put out quick, fast, and in a hurry. But the fact that, we're just the fact that we keep talking about general managers doing something to circumvent baseball rules that has such a big impact on their team, it just really kind of blows my mind that, I understand that everybody kind of wants to get a leg up, but at some point, how far are you willing to go when you run the possibility of now, hamstringing your organization or your previous organization for 5 years or more to come?
And we've gotten a lot of it this year. I mean, we had the resolution of the St. Louis Cardinals issue. We had the resolution of the Padres issue. We had the accusations against Boston. We have turnaround accusations from Boston against New York.
Yep.
And now this going on in Atlanta, there's a lot of this going around baseball right now of teams doing things that are below board in order to win baseball games. And I think that as fans of the game, we can all agree that what we really want is be above board, play the game the right way, and give us the season that we're going to get without cheating.
Right.
Because if we go into this situation much further, if it becomes more permeating we could be looking at a whole nother situation like, okay, well, you didn't use steroids, but you played in an era that did. Okay, well, your team didn't cheat, but you played in an era where teams did cheat.
Right. It's an odd thing to see. We've already seen what happened with the Red Sox a couple of years ago. They lost some, both of their players that were like this. Obviously were given free agency. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know if Coppola will be looking at a job in baseball again, especially not anytime soon. And if it is, it definitely won't be as a GM. You can't trust that. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens from there. Definitely something that is going to shake Atlanta for quite a while to come. And, like I said, if you lose those kind of prospects, yeah, you already have them. Maybe nothing good comes out of them. But the fact that you have them and then can use them for assets down the road if necessary, it really changes things for these guys.
I agree. So I have to say that we need to get rid of this sort of dour mood on this show, and we really need to get into postseason baseball. We need to make this show happy again, and we need to get into postseason baseball. If you will, we need to make out of left field great again.
We do. So as I am absolutely floored that you just said that, but that we agree there was no drinking on this show. All right. So I don't know what's going on.
No, we didn't. We agreed that there was no Jack and Coke on this show.
Play ball. Well, you know what? I do agree. It is time to get into postseason talk, our picks, all that good stuff. We're going to get that to you. Plus, who do we have for our big four end-of-year awards? And the Cy Young, the MVP, Manager of the Year, and, Rookie of the Year is already a given. But the other three, who do we have for the other three? You'll find out right after this break.
Replenishing Technologies helps athletes of all levels train, recover, and perform at their absolute best. We do this by offering the PEMF 120, the world's leading pulsed electromagnetic field therapy device. Workouts, injury, and stress cause cells to lose their natural power. PEMF works like a battery charger, helping cells regain the power needed to dump toxins, take in oxygen and nutrients, and repair. 95% of athletes report less pain, increased range of motion, more energy, and they simply feel better after using PEMF 120. If you'd like to count yourself among that group, contact us at www.replenishingtechnologiesinc.com.
And we're back. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Graham and Chris here with you from Out of Left Field. Check us out at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Of course, the Out of Left Field Baseball community page. So we've been talking about it for, all season really, and especially the last month or two, really the last several months, because the postseason picture has, for the most part, been pretty clear, Chris. And we're now into it. We've got the wild card games coming up. The Yankees will host the Twinkies tomorrow, and then the Diamondbacks will host the Rockies, a game I'm excited for because of the bad blood that began brewing between these two teams. That is, I believe, on Wednesday. And then if you told me correctly, it's Friday, I believe, is when the divisional series games start. So obviously the Astros will host the Red Sox to start off. The Indians will host the winner of the Yankees-Twins series. And then we'll have the Nationals hosting the Cubs and the Dodgers hosting the winner of the wild card games there. That's going to be an interesting matchup because these West teams have seen each other so much this year because of the unbalanced scheduling that does exist. That is going to be, I think, one of the more intriguing matchups of the at least the first week, because it kind of makes you wonder, all right, these guys know each other pretty doggone well. What's going to happen? So I go ahead and I will go ahead and put the ball in your glove. I'll let you pitch first. Start us off. You pick AL or NL, and let us know where you want to go, man. What do you think is going to happen in the first wild card game of this postseason?
Well, to be honest, let's start with the American League, because I think this presents really a fun wild card game. Now, the wild card game in the National League is going to be a lot of fun, but for a whole lot of different reasons, right? Because there is a tenseness, there is a rivalry, there is a bad blood there that's been brewing for the last couple of weeks. But the American League wild card is going to be so much fun because we get to watch the person who should be Rookie of the Year and a team that we didn't think was going to make a postseason run play another team who we didn't think was going to make a season run of any kind.
Right.
So we get to watch the Yankees and the Twinkies play in the wild card game to see who's going to go and play the number one overall Cleveland Indians. And I think that game's going to be a whole lot of fun. Here's the problem that I see for the Twins. The Twins have some tools. They have some good pitching. They have some good hitting, but they don't have a lot of either one. And
right.
The amount of damage that the Yankees line up when you're talking about guys like Judd and Sanchez, the amount of damage they can do in a very short period of time, in my opinion, is more than the Twins can overcome if the pitching gets out of control early. If you let Aaron Judge go deep and you let Sanchez go deep, that might be the end of the game.
Right. And that's something that you and I discussed. I think it was yesterday when we talked. And that's pretty much for me kind of my same concern. Now here is something that I heard, and I think it was Brian Kenny talking about it, and I believe he was discussing it when it came to the Yankees. And basically, his idea was start the game with the bullpen. Don't try and throw a starter out there. Use your bullpen to try and get through this game, the enough pitchers that you have, and then hope that the Twins make at least one mistake, and then you can shut it down. Obviously, we know they have Dylan Betances. Chapman's struggles have been storied this year. Has not been that great. There's a good likelihood that Luis Severino will start. I believe he started 4 or 5 days ago, so he's probably in line for that. And we'll see if it ends up being Irvin Santana. The Twins didn't have, like you said, a horrible season. They've got pieces in there, and they've got some pretty decent momentum, on their side. A team that they finished 7-3 in their last 10, and 85 and 77 isn't anything to really shake your fist at. But that is, I agree, that's my concern. The big thing is going to be if the Twins threaten Gary Sanchez, who has been discussed a lot this week because of his pass ball, wild pitch issues, not being able to get down and block the ball. He had, I think it was something like 40 pitches that got away from him this year, which is a very high number for a catcher. Led the major leagues by quite a bit, and I'll have to double check my numbers on that. But the big thing is if Sanchez does his job, obviously, behind the plate, and the Yankees do what we have seen them do power-wise the entire year, that's where I agree with you. I believe that the Yankees have the edge in this. They're going to be home. It's going to be a raucous crowd. They're going to be behind them. I think they have the edge to take the wild card game.
And that's kind of the issue.
I'm sorry, it was 16 pass balls.
Baseball.
I was way off. 16 pass balls that he has, which is still leads the majors by quite a bit.
That's going to be the issue because the technical baseball for the Yankees hasn't really been there. This isn't a team that's won games because their technical prowess has been high or their starting rotation has been strong. They have basically beaten teams into submission with the weight and power of their bats. And their offense has been huge and is easily the reason that they're in the position that they are to head into the playoffs this year. Now, one unique position, though, that puts them in, like you were saying, is the Yankees get to take this game and treat it like game 163, whereas the Twins have to come into this game thinking game one of the playoffs. Their number one guy is going to be on the mound. the Yankees don't have to be in that position because they have the bats to back that up. They can put their number 4 or 5 guy in the rotation out on the mound, or like you said, put a long reliever in to start the game, and then switch it up if the Twins threaten.
Right.
Now, I think
that's what worries me. That's what worries me is trying to switch it up when you're already doing something that is not the norm for anybody in that clubhouse. And if the offense is not good, if it's starting out flat for the Yankees and you need to get a spark going, but your bullpen are the guys that are coming out there starting off the game, that's the one thing that concerns me is when guys are so ingrained in a routine, what does that do mentally for that ball club if they find themselves behind early and are trying to claw back into the one-game playoff?
If I was the Yankees in this situation, I don't think that I would throw the bullpen out there like that. What I would do is I would just continue the rotation because that's what those guys are really expecting. That's what they're going to be used to. Treat this like game 163. Whoever the starter may be coming up the rotation, have him start that game, but don't feel like you have to put your ace out just because it's a one-game playoff. Treat this like game 163. Go and get the W, which I think, in my opinion, the Yankees are going to do. They're going to be at home. They've got the power, and they've got the edge over the Twins, in my opinion. I think the Yankees win this game and go face the Cleveland Indians in round 1.
Now, the fun one is on the flip side here because you have a very different perspective on this Rockies-Diamondbacks game because of who the Rockies are likely to pitch in this game in Phoenix. I think that a guy who we may very well be mentioning in the MVP discussion in J.D. Martinez, as well with Ketel Marte, Paul Goldschmidt, all the guys that are big in that ball club. And I'm drawing a bunch of blanks on names here, but I think that when it comes down to it, that on paper, obviously by record and I think by personnel, the Diamondbacks have a much bigger advantage over this Colorado ball club. You are concerned that with the I think it's John Gray, the pitcher that the Rockies are likely to throw out there, that he's kind of had the number on this Diamondbacks team and could present a pretty big challenge for these guys in a winner take all kind of matchup to go into the divisional series.
Right, and so Gray's raw numbers are pretty strong. He's young. He's 10-4. His ERA 3.67. He's not an ace right now. Right? But here's the thing. In 13 games this year, he allowed 3 or fewer earned runs in consecutive starts. And in the time that span starts, he's 7-3 with a 2.64 ERA, 80 strikeouts, and 16 walks. And he's played the Diamondbacks, I think, 5 or 6 times in that time period. And he has shut them down consistently. Now, he's solid against the Diamondbacks in the first place. He's 2-1 against them. He has a 3.50 ERA in 3 starts. He's dominated Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt, by the way, is 0 for 11 against John Gray with 5 Ks. We'll get into Paul Goldschmidt later, but this is not the kind of numbers you expect to see from a possible MVP candidate, especially on a team who is in solid control of that number one slot. He has 1 loss against them, and they tagged him for 3 runs and 5 hits in 5 innings. But other than that, he has been extremely strong against the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the only thing that the Diamondbacks can do, and in my opinion, the right thing to do, is to start Zach Greinke, because Greinke's their ace. He's their number 1 guy. He's 17-7 this year, 3.2 ERA, He's 2-1 against the Rockies, though, in 5 appearances with 2 no decisions. And what that tells me is that puts the Greinke in a position where he's going to have to hold the Rockies to a low number of runs because Gray is going to be able to hold the Diamondbacks offense. And Greinke is the type of pitcher who depends on a potent offense. His 17 wins have depended on guys like Goldschmidt and J.D. Martinez putting up huge numbers, Peralta, all these guys, right, putting up huge numbers. And when you go into a situation where they're facing a pitcher who might be able to shut them down offensively, Greinke suddenly doesn't seem like the best choice.
Yeah, and the issue here is a guy that I would have been kind of interested to see pitch would have been Robbie Ray. The problem is Robbie Ray pitched yesterday, so not there. And you have to look and see, obviously, and that's, I guess, kind of the beauty of this wild card game is you got to figure out where everybody is. You mentioned Zach Greinke, and I bring this comparison up, I guess, a fairly decent amount, but Greinke's a guy who, when he's on, is lights out good.
Right.
He's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
But he reminds me a lot in that respect of Tom Glavine, Hall of Fame pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. Lefty, but I say reminds me of it in a way that, Glavine was a guy who was very hot and cold. If he started off in the right way, man, he killed it. I mean, it was a game. You're facing this guy, and there's a reason. Basically, there was a reason why, he was a Hall of Famer. But on the days where he was off, it took him at least 2, sometimes maybe 3 innings to finally go ahead and get himself, ready to, kind of in the groove, if you will. And that's the concern you have to have with Zach Greinke. Greinke, I don't think, is going to be able to pitch. The problem is Greinke pitched on Sunday, or I'm sorry, he pitched on Friday. So right now you're looking at what, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, I guess that gives him 3 days rest. There's a possibility that with the way that this came down, and again, I know Torey Lovullo is trying to get these guys, in a prime position, but we might be seeing something like there's a possibility that Taijuan Walker could end up being the guy who we see just the way that the rotation has worked out, and by time, a guy who's 9-9 with a 3.49 ERA, and again, we saw Walker pitch, and he was solid. Now, if you want to win the game, just don't put Fernando Rodney in there. That's the big thing. All right, don't put Rodney in the game. Just let him sit back in the bullpen and chill. Just let him relax. Everything's good. Everything's kosher. But at the end, I don't know, man. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Taijuan Walker pitched on Saturday, so it's going to be an interesting one. It really is. I don't know who Lovullo's going to start. You go for it.
So here's the deal. Lovullo's going to start Zach Greinke. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be Greinke versus Gray. And this matchup between these two pitchers is where, as good a season as they've had, as well as they've done down the stretch, as much as J.D. Martinez has helped them stay in control of this wild card, this is where the Diamondbacks need to be afraid. And I'm going to hit you with some numbers here really quick so that you can get an idea of what I mean. The player on the Diamondbacks who hits the best against John Gray is David Peralta. He's seen him 10 times this year, 10 at-bats against him. He has 4 hits. He's hitting .400 against them. However, he has K'd 3 times. The next best, also at .400, but with only 5 at-bats against him, is A.J. Pollock. 2 hits and 5 at-bats, also hitting .400. When you go from there, Paul Goldschmidt is 0 for 11. Daniel Descalso, another strong piece that they need to be active, is 2 for 7. Jake Lamb, one of the other power hitters, hitting 143 against him in 7 at-bats. I mean, it doesn't go up from there until you get to guys like Gregor Blanco, Brandon Drury, and Chris Owings who don't start games. So you're getting into a situation here where the Diamondbacks can't hit John Gray. He struck them out 22 times. He has 22 Ks against them in 3 starts. On the flip side, you're talking about guys like Nolan Arenado, DJ LeMahieu, Ian Desmond, who are all hitting. Arenado is 6 for 16, hitting 375 against Greinke. LeMahieu is
Charlie Blackmon in there
13.
too.
Oh yeah, Charlie Blackmon too. I'm sorry. Well, Charlie Blackmon's not hitting very well. He's 3 for 16, hits 188 against him. He's one of the guys who Greinke has his number. But DJ LeMahieu's hitting 385 for him. He's 5 for 13, and Ian Desmond is 2 for 6, hitting over 300 against him as well. This is a lineup that Greinke needs to be afraid of because they can hit him, and he has given up 6 home runs to this lineup.
And obviously, we're under the impression we're talking about the Twins game. This game is on Wednesday, so obviously he has another day of rest prior to going in to that start. So obviously, there's a good possibility for him there. So the question then becomes, what's your pick? You've given the numbers, you've given the stats.
Right.
Who's going to win this ball game?
My hot take: I think that the one person on the Diamondbacks team who can carry this, and in my opinion is going to be, if they gave an MVP out for wild card games, is going to be JD Martinez, who has 2 home runs against Gray, is going to be the guy that we see put the Diamondbacks over the Rockies in this wild card game and send the Rockies to LA to play the Dodgers.
I'm going to pick the Diamondbacks as well, more so because I think that they've got a little more some tenured veterans in there, guys who are going to be don't have that youth and kind of inexperience in the postseason. The Rockies have been a fantastic team, and this could very easily be probably the best, I think, mano-a-mano wild card that we have seen in recent memory. Obviously, it's not going to be it's not going to be quite the. I hope it's not going to be like the Braves Cardinals from 4 or 5 years ago with the with the infield fly that just became kind of the biggest cluster brouhaha in wild card history. But I do believe that that the Diamondbacks will be the more powerful team to go ahead and move forward into the divisional series. That being said, now we look into the big stuff. That's going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers against who we believe will be the Diamondbacks. That is going to be the matchup that I am most keen on, and that's where we're going to finally see it's Clayton Kershaw ready to go for another postseason run where expectations are massively high and everyone is penciling you in next to the Cleveland Indians right now in the World Series. The question is, do we agree with that? Obviously, we're not going to go all the way down the line until next week, but we want to get to the divisional series. But Kershaw, this is a statement year for him. This is a Dodgers team with 104 wins, best team in baseball, had even higher expectations until that big slide. Do the Dodgers have what it takes to go ahead and get by the Diamondbacks in a best-of-5 series?
That's a good question.
I try to have one every now and again.
Yes. The Dodgers have what it takes to beat the Diamondbacks in a best-of-5 series. But of all the teams in Major League Baseball, in all of Major League Baseball, of all the teams that the Dodgers should be most afraid of, the Diamondbacks are it. Because it's been shown time and time again this year that the Diamondbacks have the Dodgers number. They can hit all their pitchers. They can defend, or they can throw past all their hitters. It's been shown repetitively that the Diamondbacks can beat the Dodgers. Now, as we've said on this show before, the playoffs are a microcosm of the regular season. Anything can happen in a 5-game series, and typically what you would see happen in a season series is going to play out in the playoffs as well. The Dodgers are probably going to take the Diamondbacks in this best of five series, but I say look for it to go 5 games and look for that fifth game to be a slobber knocker.
And that's where I am. And I wanted to go ahead and make the gutsy call and say the Diamondbacks win. To me, Bryce Harper would have been the key in this for the Nationals. Because of his injury, that's kind of what gives the Dodgers a little bit of an edge to me in that series. But the way that Kershaw has pitched, and my concern really coming down to it is what is that bullpen for the Dodgers going to look like? Are they going to be the same bullpen that couldn't hold leads, that gave up a crazy number of leads? Is Yu Darvish going to be the guy that the Dodgers went and picked up? Yu Darvish has pitched fairly well for them, even though he had his difficulties. I will as well pick the Dodgers in this. Again, it goes 5. This series I think is going to be a very big one to gut out. It's going to be probably, I think, the third best series of the postseason will be the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks. Moving up north to the Nationals and the Cubs, John Lackey is supposed to come out of the bullpen. Jake Arrieta will not be there for potentially expected to be at least the first 2 games of the DS, maybe longer. This team has, yes, they fought their way to 92 wins, did it very, very ugly. Almost had the same record. They had 44 road wins, 48 home wins. Did not look the best. Lester struggled. Both guys were okay. Arrieta was pretty good. Lackey actually was pretty strong for that ball club. But Strasburg, Scherzer, Roark, Gio Gonzalez had a very good year for the Nationals, a year that he needed to have. To me, the Nationals should take care of the Cubs. I'll give the Cubs 1. I'll give them in 4 games. I don't think the Cubs take it to 5. I think it's a 3-1 wrap-up, and the Nationals will face the Dodgers in the ALCS with, again, our LCS and World Series picks to come. But what say you?
Well, I find it hard to disagree. I don't think the Cubs...
You're learning.
I don't think the Cubs have what it takes to get past the Washington Nationals at this point, especially when you have Rendon and Zim and Murph still in the lineup despite the injury to Bryce Harper. All those guys still on huge tears as far as batting average go and as far as their ability to get on base, as far as their ability to hit the ball. Still frightening for starting pitchers to face a lineup like that. Still frightening for any pitcher to face a lineup like that. And in my opinion, to be honest, if Bryce Harper didn't get hurt, the Washington Nationals are our 4th 100-win team this year. They were only 3 off of it anyway. If Bryce Harper didn't get hurt, they're our 4th 100-win team. And I just don't think that the Chicago Cubs have shown that they were anything more than a team of destiny last year. They were destined to win that World Series. And to be honest, they almost gave it up in
every level.
At the end there. At every level. Yeah. They almost gave it up to the Giants in the divisional series. They almost gave it up to the Dodgers in the LCS. They almost gave it up. They went 7 games with Cleveland. Now, as much fun as it would be to watch the Cubs and Cleveland go back at it again, I don't think it's going to happen this year. The Cubs are out.
It would not have.
I think you're being generous to give them 1. But I can't help but agree that the Cubs are going to fight their way to 1 victory. So I think also a 4-game wrap-up.
Moving into the American League, obviously we both have the Yankees coming victorious. That puts the Yankees facing the Cleveland Indians. I'm sorry. You mentioned this, and you were right, that the Yankees have an immense amount of offensive power. The problem there is so do the Indians. And the Indians have fantastic pitching with Corey Kluber, Carlos Carrasco, those guys. That is going to be a very quick series. Assuming that the Indians don't make mistakes, they sweep that series.
Right, and let's not pretend. This is a team that they're going to face, and part of their 22-game run of wins, that phenomenal winning streak that the Indians went on, was 2 doubleheader wins against this team, right? So they beat them 4 times and in 2 days. So I have no problem saying that the Indians are going to take this in a 3-game sweep, assuming they don't make some massive mistake to either Aaron Judge late in the game or, something bad would have to happen. And that
the way
really,
Kluber and Carrasco have pitched, I think that's where you're going to get the inexperience and youth of Judge and get him to chase pitches out of the zone and will make him ineffective in the divisional series.
Right. And I agree. I completely agree. I think Cleveland has this down. I think Cleveland zooms through the playoffs yet again to head. That's a no-brainer call to me. As far as Houston and Boston go,
and that to me is also going to be a really exciting series because Boston's pitching while missing David Price. And you kind of looked at me, we were talking, and you kind of gave me that, you got to be kidding me. When I told you that my linchpin in this series is Drew Pomeranz for the Red Sox. Guy's pitched fantastic. Really, I mean, has pitched very, very well for that ball club, has kept them in a good position to win. They won the division by 2 games with their number 1 pitcher, who they've paid an obscene amount of money to, on the bench for the majority, if not almost all of the entire season. Probably going to be a bullpen guy in David Price. Rick Porcello didn't pitch well. Pomeranz was very, very good. They've got some pop. They've got some young kids. But at the end of the day, the Astros should have more power with Brian McCann, Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve with his 4th straight 200-hit season, plus from the back of McCullers, Keuchel, and Verlander. The Red Sox, I think, will make it, again, a 3-1 series, but the Houston Astros will win that series.
And I completely agree. The pitching is there. Pomeranz notwithstanding, the pitching is there for the Houston Astros. The pickup of Verlander at the waiver trade deadline was huge for them. It's going to be part of the reason I think that they have any opportunity to even challenge Cleveland going into the LCS. And to be honest, the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is the McCullers Sale matchup that I picture Game 1 to be. I picture Game 1 to be a low-scoring affair between Verlander. No. Yeah, Verlander Sale matchup. I picture Game 1 to be a low-scoring affair, heading into another low-scoring affair when Chris Sale takes them out in Game 2, and I don't know if I'm more excited for Verlander Sale or for McCullers McCullers and
Porcello.
All 3 of those matchups have the potential to be low-scoring game after low-scoring game after low-scoring game. But in my opinion, this is another divisional series. Right. This is another divisional series.
Right. Because if the Red Sox keep it close, yeah, I will say 4. I will say a 3-1 series victory by the Astros. But here's my caveat: if the Red Sox can keep it close, if it's not a 1-run game, either 4 or behind, I'm interested to see if John Farrell, how much he uses Craig Kimbrell. Kimbrell has not been the best in non-save situations, but he is still by far the best closer in the game. At least in the American League, you could maybe say Kenley Jansen is one of the best closers in Major League Baseball. So, if you put it within a 1-run game or a tie game, and Craig Kimbrell comes in because you have the heart of that Boston lineup, Kimbrell could become a very big piece for this ball club, even if they do not have a lead down the stretch.
And look for lessons to have been learned from previous years. You don't go into a tie game.
That was obviously a wild card game, but yes, with what happened.
But you don't go into a tie game and not bring in your guy because you're afraid that you might need him for later. You bring in the guy, and you bring in the guy, and you bring in the guy. And I think that the lesson has been learned, and he's going to be used in the proper way. But it is interesting to see how exactly that proper way is going to play out. I agree, though. I think Houston takes this, and we get a Houston-Cleveland. Oh, man, I hope Houston-Cleveland LCS, because can you imagine the pitching performances that are going to happen in an LCS between Houston and Cleveland?
It makes me so excited. That's what I'm hoping for, because that, to me, that will be that will be the number one series, with the Dodgers and Nationals to me being the second best series, aside from whoever our final World Series contenders will be. I think the NL is going to be great. I think Cleveland will be a buzzsaw, but we'll get into that with the LCS stuff.
I feel like we're in a position right now to have just 3 phenomenal rounds of postseason baseball.
Yep.
Just exciting and drama-filled, and then when we finally get to that fall classic, there's not an option on the table at this point that I wouldn't want to see play in the fall classic.
Exactly. All right, I have a favor to ask you, because we are an extremely low-budget show. Bang your hand on your desk for a drum roll, please. Thank you. You have waited for them. We have teased them. They are here. Our end-of-year awards. God, that was the worst thing. I should have just let it go. Wow. Thank you for leaning your mic all the way down to your desk just so we could hear the little pitter-patter of your hands on that desk. Massive appreciation for the sound effects, Mr. Furry. End-of-year awards. It is good stuff. We have been waiting for it. We have some we're going to agree. Somewhere, I think, again, it's going to be close to a 1-1A. So let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's go ahead and just knock one out of the way. Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge, Rookies of the Year. Next.
Done.
No argument there. This is where it begins to get fun. And you want to? I'll give you the choice. Do you want to go? We'll save MVP for last. So do you want to go Cy Young or Manager of the Year?
Let's talk Manager of the Year.
So
Cy Young's going to be a lot of fun too.
I'm pretty frustrated that I gave you this idea for a guy you might want to look at, because I realized I should have just kept my mouth shut and looked at it myself. But at the same time, I also looked back at a team who struggled mightily last year. Both teams struggled mightily last year and put up very good performances this year. It's one of the reasons why we mentioned that the Cubs, we don't have a lot of faith, because this team kept it very, very close in the National League Central. I called it these two guys at the All-Star break. Thought they were both going to make the playoffs. I was 1 for 2. But to me, Craig Counsell of the Milwaukee Brewers takes home the Manager of the Year for the National League. And Paul Molitor of the Minnesota Twins takes home Manager of the Year for the AL. A fantastic season by the Twinkies. Did something we didn't expect them to even have a winning record, let alone be the second wild card team in the 2017 postseason. Hats off to him, a Hall of Famer on the field, putting together a fantastic managerial season this year after he was really looked poorly upon. So Craig Counsell, Paul Molitor, my picks for the Manager of the Year.
Which in and of itself is unique. You don't often see a Hall of Fame caliber player become a great manager. And so it's good to see Paul Molitor be able to pull that off. Now, that being said, I can agree with you as far as the American League Manager of the Year. There are a lot of guys you can look at out there, but for the Minnesota Twins to come completely off the radar, in fact, laughably off the radar, I mean, to the point where we joked about the idea of the Minnesota Twins even sniffing the playoffs this year, which we apologize for. A dear little 8-pound, 6-ounce baby Jesus, we apologize. But the fact is, nobody saw this coming from the Twins.
Isn't that copyrighted by Ricky Bobby Inc.?
Nobody saw the Minnesota Twins coming into this season and ending it with a playoff run. Now, despite the fact that the Twins are probably going to get bounced out of the playoffs early, it doesn't take anything away from what Paul Molitor has been able to do in Minnesota. Nothing at all. And I think that you're right there, but I'm afraid I have to challenge you a bit on the National League side. And the reason I have to do that is because
I gave you the freaking idea.
First year, because you gave me a great idea. And you did give me the idea, but after having looked into it and seen the numbers, I think that the idea is not only good, but it's got a rock-solid base to it. First-year manager, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water before I get into this. Excuse me. First-year manager Torey Lovullo of the Arizona Diamondbacks, my now home state team, I guess. I live here. I'm a resident.
And a skipper that you rightly criticized for some poor management of the bullpen earlier this year as well.
I think I did. But to be honest, he has shown, despite his difficulties with bullpen management, he has shown an ability to get this team to win ball games. And if anything is a testament to that, we're talking about a Diamondbacks team that is almost the same Diamondbacks team that they were last year, who flip-flopped their win-loss record exactly. Diamondbacks went 69-93 last year. Torey Lovullo comes in, takes the reins. They end up 93-69 this year. That, in a first-year manager, is, well, in my opinion, irrefutable evidence that he has what it takes to take home the hardware as manager of the year this year. And I can't begrudge you the choice of the Brewers manager, but I got to give a little bit of shout out to my now hometown team, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and Torey Lovullo for his ability to manage that team.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you look at it, I mean, they made the playoffs, and the Brewers didn't. I just, you know, and they stayed
which isn't supposed
strong
to mean
in that division on a consistent basis. I mean, you're looking at records. It's the Brewers were one game behind the Rockies, which puts them 5 or 6 games behind the Diamondbacks. And I agree with you. You know, yes, Tito Francona, AJ Hinch could be talked about for manager of the year for the AL, but we expected the Astros to win this year, and they struggled mightily. And at the end of the day, the Indians played well, but it wasn't Tito Francona that put them on that huge 22-game winning streak. So, you know, I think it's going to be an interesting one. You know, I think that, you know, again, we're both, I think, grabbing the 2 best candidates for sure in the National League, and we'll see where it goes. On the flip side, now we're into the Cy Young. To me, no one's touching Max Scherzer in the National League. Again, he will go back-to-back. Was, to me, by far the best pitcher. Clayton Kershaw was very close, but the back issue, again, took him out for too many starts to really, for my money, to put him into a serious look. Same thing, we had a couple of guys for the MVP discussion. The fun part really gets into the AL Cy Young Award for me. And I mean, you can go one-on-one with these guys looking side to side. You know, and I've told you for a while, I thought Chris Sale, you know, he had the starts he was going to be. After what I have seen and the way I have seen him pitch, and I watched a decent number of their games, read a lot. I am changing what I have said, what I expected. I am giving the nod to Corey Kluber. Kluber missed 1 month of baseball, four starts for the Cleveland Indians. In that 1 month, the month of May is where he missed time. The Indians lost 14 games, which is roughly 25% of the entire team's losses in the 2017 season. 18-4, a 2.25 ERA, the best of his career, 265 strikeouts, walked 36, and this is in 203 innings pitched in 29 games. Pitched 3 fewer games and had roughly 30 fewer strikeouts than Chris Sale, not to mention 5 complete games and 3 of those being shutouts. Corey Kluber put together a fantastic, masterful season of what pitching can be. He's my pick.
And to be 100% honest, with a strikeouts per 9 right up near 12, just under what Chris Sale's is, there's every possibility, had he made those 3 starts in May, that we have a second 300 strikeout pitcher in the American League. I think I want to argue with you on this. I really do. And I really thought you were going to go with Chris Sale and we were going to be able to have a good discussion about this. You kind of blindsided me with that Corey Kluber pick, but I can't argue. Corey Kluber, I think, is the guy. I think Corey Kluber wins the American League Cy Young. National League.
I thought you were going to do the same thing. I thought you were going with Sale. So
the only here's the argument for Chris Sale: 308 strikeouts and record set for consecutive 10-plus strikeout games at 13. So those are the arguments for Chris Sale. But one fewer win in three more starts. Right. So, I can't argue with you. I think
in 4 more losses.
Corey Kluber came back from that May off and said, "I am going to make a statement. I am going to make my case," and he did. I think he did it very effectively. I think he did it effectively enough to actually win him the hardware.
I don't believe that the voters will hold those 3 games against him. Again, 4 more losses for Chris Sale, and the way that Kluber pitched, 18 games won, is just it's an astronomical number, and I certainly believe that is where the Cy Young Award goes. So, to the end is the most valuable player, and this is the MVP is one of the hardest awards to grab because, at the end, it really is just who is the best player in baseball, it feels. What are you looking for? Most valuable player for the team? Most valuable in what way? Because we can easily argue, and you and I did before the show, that Joey Votto should be the most valuable player in Major League Baseball. Played every game this year, 134 walks to 83 strikeouts, had 179 hits, batted .320, slugged .578, on base of .454 for a 1.032 OPS, 36 dingers, 100 ribbies. Add that with 34 dubs and a triple. But Joey Votto was on one of the worst teams in baseball. And while I was willing to go ahead and be out on the limb and give my pick to Joey Votto, it would have just been for the sake of having Votto's name because I know he's not going to have a chance to win the MVP, and he should be looked at. You can look at him. I'll give you the name that no one would have thought to look at is Anthony Rendon of the Nationals, and you mentioned it as well. Murphy, Zimmerman, Rendon, and Harper, they all profit from being on the same team 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't get around all of them. Unless you're Corey Kluber. Then you just strike them all out. Okay, game over, no problem. If you're everybody else in the Major League Baseball, you have to go at them. And Rendon played in 147 games, hit .301 with a .403 on base and a .533 slugging percentage with 25 dingers and 100 ribbies. On top of that, 41 doubles, man. It was fantastic. He played absolutely fantastic. But to me, at the end of it, what's that?
But you can't pitch around him.
Right.
You have to go after him. He's the number 2 guy in the lineup. So the first inning, you have to go after him because he's your second leadoff guy, and he's a leadoff type hitter. He could easily be a leadoff hitter because of that high batting average and high on base. So you have to go after him, and you can't go around him because up behind him comes Zim, and up behind him comes Bryce Harper.
And then Murphy. And you can make the same argument for who my final pick was, and he was my pick. I believe it was my pick at the All-Star break. It was a guy who I finally had a chance to watch play in person. You've seen him quite a few times. At the end of the day, the guy who to me had the most impactful play for a team that needed that kind of play to make a push into the postseason is Paul Goldschmidt, first baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks. 155 games, 166 hits, drove in 120 runs with 36 home runs, 34 doubles, 3 triples. Hey, guess what? A first baseman stole 18 bags as well. Not to mention 3 points below 300 for his average and an OPS of 966. It's not the most beautiful stat line in the world, 94 walks, 147 Ks. But when he finished second in the MVP race in 2013, still relatively similar numbers there. And I think that his production this year was even more important to what the Diamondbacks needed to make it into the postseason for 2017.
Well, I'm in a position where I can argue with you all day. And we could have a long, drawn-out conversation about who was the most impactful player on that team. We can have a long, drawn-out conversation about who was the most impactful player in the National League. I feel like, with the exception of the fact that he only appeared in 119 games this year, a strong argument could be made for J.D. Martinez, the same of those same Arizona Diamondbacks, who hit .303 with a .376 on base, a .690 slugging percentage, and a .1066 OPS. But again, he played 119 games, although in those 119 games, he did come to the plate 489 times, only about 160 times fewer than he did in a season when he played 160 games or 158 games. So, yes, that 40 games that he missed equates to about 120 plate appearances, and you can't forecast what those plate appearances might have ended up. So, though I believe in my heart of hearts that J.D. Martinez is one of the biggest reasons and the most impactful player on that team. Yes.
Before you tell me if you agree, I just want to know something. And I know you've looked at the numbers, and there was a ton of talk. How strongly would you have considered, or are you considering, if you aren't agreeing with me, Giancarlo Stanton? Crickets.
So here's the problem. Giancarlo Stanton doesn't get a look from me for the same reason Joey Votto doesn't get a look. Because the Marlins are one of the worst teams in the National League East. And it's great to be an impactful player. It really is. And I think that baseball should have an impact player of the year. I really do. But that's what the MVP is.
Second at 77 and 85 this year, though.
Yeah, but in a team that was in a division that was run away with by the Nationals, and let's not forget that 77 and 85 puts them 10 games out of the wild card. So while they managed to beat three garbage teams in the Mets, the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies, and finish second, it did nothing for them because it doesn't put the Milwaukee Brewers out of the wild card race. It doesn't put the St. Louis Cardinals out of the wild card race. It doesn't put the Diamondbacks, the Rockies, and it barely puts Pittsburgh out of that wild card race by only 2 games. So,
but then
yes,
with what happened with Jose Fernandez, does his worth and importance not become magnified because you've lost what was one of the best young arms, not the best young arm in baseball, to a tragedy, and yet your franchise still manages to only be 5 games below 500, or I'm sorry, 4 games below 500 to finish off a season in a division where, like you said, it was run away with almost. I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. But I don't think any of us thought the Marlins were at least going to be that close to 500 with what they were going to go through and not having a lot of faith in that rotation. So does that not mean more to you because of what he did?
I think we all knew that Miami was better than Atlanta, New York, and Philadelphia. Maybe not New York. I think we probably figured New York was going to end up second in that league. But by the All-Star break, when we figured out the problems that were happening on the mound with Noah Syndergaard and with Matt Harvey, we knew the Mets weren't going anywhere. Now, I don't think that 475 baseball, when you have a guy that hit 59 home runs, is anything to write home about. I'm sorry, I just don't. 20 games out of the division, 10 games out of the wild card. I just don't think that you can give the nod to Giancarlo Stanton simply because they managed to be the second best team in one of the worst divisions. It just, in my opinion, you just can't. They're the only division in the National League whose second place team didn't break 80 wins. The only single one. The Milwaukee Brewers, the second-place team in the Central, 86 wins, 531 winning percentage. I mean, come on, Arizona 93 wins, Colorado's 87 wins. You have to go all the way to the fourth-place team.
What if they were 500? If they were 500, would you have picked Stanton?
No.
Because in 1998, the Cardinals were 83 and 79, and Mark McGwire hit 70 dingers.
Mark McGwire broke one of the longest-standing long ball records in the history of baseball, one that nobody ever thought was going to fall. And I still don't think that in and of itself is deserving of an MVP title. In my opinion,
I don't think it should be an MPV title either. MVP, not the MPV.
The MVP, in my opinion, has to be a guy who makes an impact on a team that is a winning team, that has a winning record. And I just don't see, for all of that big bat, for all of that hard swing, they went nowhere. We expected a little more out of them than 475 baseball, even without Jose Fernandez. And they couldn't produce. With guys like Stanton and guys like Yelich and guys, I just think we expected a little bit more out of them than we got. And the only thing that really made us smile about the Marlins was towards the end of the season when Stanton went on a tear of hitting dinger after dinger after dinger. He wouldn't even be near 60 if he hadn't gone on that 12-game run where he hit a home run in every game.
So then, long story short, because we at least got a debate in for you guys. I know we have gone way long. A ton of stuff came up, and we're going to try and get out of here before it gets until you're listening to us and the next show comes out. So at the end of the day, Chris Furry, are you agreeing with my pick of Paul Goldschmidt, and are you also agreeing with my pick of Jose Altuve in the American League, who I think that one is pretty much a foregone conclusion?
I think Jose Altuve is the guy. I think that there's no real arguing with the idea that Jose Altuve is the guy. Yes. I agree with you that Jose Altuve picks up the MVP in the American League and that Paul Goldschmidt picks up the MVP in the National League. And I agree with you because of this. And I have to say this. You have to say it on the air because I said it off the air. That the only way you can give Joey Votto a long, hard look at MVP for being on one of the worst teams in baseball is if you also turn around and look at a guy like Buster Posey, whose numbers are very similar to the ones that he had in his MVP year. In fact, the only reason his numbers aren't almost identical is because he hit 12 fewer home runs, and that dropped his slugging percentage down. Beyond that, you have to look at a guy who's hitting 320 and is an impactful player, best player on his team, most impactful player on his team, just as hard as you have to look at the Joey Votto, because neither of those teams did anything this year at all worth talking about.
I think
so, yes,
I might actually may change my pick on this in thinking about it. Don't know why it slipped my mind. Obviously, we do things beyond this show. But I'm sitting here, I just mentioned his name. I'm like, how in the world did I not just look at his numbers? How am I looking at all these guys and let this guy slip by me? I am changing my pick for National League MVP. Right here, right now. Call me a dingbat, call me whatever you want. I'm changing my pick. Same division. He will face this person on Wednesday night. My pick, officially, this is it. Sorry for everybody else that thought they had it in there. You're going to get one of us to finally disagree. My pick is Charlie Blackmon. In 159 games, he had 213 hits, batted .331 with a .399 on base, slugged .601 for an even 1.0 OPS, with 35 doubles, 14 triples, 37 dingers, and 104 ribs. With a team with numbers like that, I understand that the hits and some of those numbers can be inflated because of the elevation. But you look at that kind of consistent production and playing all but 2 games this season. And there is my apologies to Charlie Blackmon for not looking at those numbers longer and harder and really putting that into perspective, because I had kind of targeted Goldschmidt since the beginning, since the All-Star break, and I was kind of looking to try and stick with that pick because I thought it was a good pick. Charlie Blackmon's numbers to me are screaming, and I can't sit back. Even with 65 walks and 135 Ks, he's where I go.
All right, so I guess we're going to get more disagreement here because as you said that, I had to go look at some numbers too. And I think you're right about the team that the National League MVP is going to come from.
But
I don't think it's Charlie Blackmon.
Really?
Yeah. 159 games, 606 at-bats, 187 hits, 43 doubles, 37 home runs, 130 RBI, 62 walks to 106 strikeouts, hitting .309 with a .373 on base and a .586 slugging for a .959 OPS. Nolan Arenado.
Well, we need to probably just redo this entire segment of the show then, don't we? I mean, hey, you guys want real. This is real. And, yeah, I mean, again, fantastic numbers. Without a doubt, fantastic numbers. Wow. Wow. I mean, and what does that say for the, the way that we kind of overlooked what the Diamondbacks were, and I'll tell you the one thing that'll scream out at you that is, well, yeah, I'm sorry, thank you.
And to our detriment, and to be fair to both of us, we overlooked it because they play 82 games or 81 games in Mile High Stadium, right? Not Mile,
in
but
Coors Field.
In Coors Field at a Mile High. They do. But they play 81 games out of there too.
Right.
And those are powerful numbers.
They are, but
here's
my only thing.
Because the Diamondbacks have taken up so much of our time, they've done so much that we didn't expect them to do, and the Rockies have always been kind of steady, that number 2 wildcard type team for the last few years, that
right.
When we see these numbers come from these guys, we just go, oh, well, you kind of expect that from them.
Here's where I will disagree. 43 doubles is fantastic. But I will take happily 35 doubles and 14 triples. I'll take the 14 triples by Blackmon along with those doubles. Yes, okay, he drove in about 26 more runs than Blackmon did. But home runs are the same. Walks and strikeouts are roughly the same. Blackmon about 20 more strikeouts, and then Arenado's batting average is I believe you said was 309. About so 22 points shy of where Charlie Blackmon is. So I understand where you're going with. I am happy to stick with Blackmon on this. So kind of an on-the-fly change. It's just, sometimes things kind of come to you and you're sitting there crunching numbers in your head.
Do me a favor. Add up the extra base hits that Charlie Blackmon had. Doubles, triples, and home runs.
You have to give me a second. I think our listeners here are starting to kill us, man. We've been on. We're getting, this has got to be our longest show that we've had. We want to, again, thank you guys.
This is the last show of the season. It deserves to be
with
long.
us. Yeah, it is the last one of the season. So thank you guys for sticking with us. We do appreciate it. Graham and Chris here on Out of Left Field. Going to be just a few more minutes, but we want to give you guys really, and this might not be kind of the idea of debate that you thought you were going to get, but hey, we're not the most, not always most kosher show. We do our best. Help me out there on those numbers, man. I'm trying to get everything. Here we go. Pulled up here. And you
Sure.
said you wanted me to look at Blackman's
5 triples,
extra
35
base
doubles. Right, 35 doubles, 14 triples. And how many home runs?
37.
That puts his extra base hits total at 86, and Nolan Arenado's extra base hits total at 87.
At 86?
Blackman at 86, Arenado at 87, extra base.
87. Okay. I'll take those extra triples, those extra, that extra base over the extra doubles. I understand what you're saying. Just to me, I'll take the extra speed. So.
What I was trying to show there is that the ability for both of those players to hit the ball and get extra base hits is phenomenal, and something that we should really apologize not only to our listeners but to Nolan Arenado and Charlie Blackman for overlooking in this entire conversation up to this point.
And it goes, and that's the hard part. You're looking at guys who really are, are West Coast guys, aside from the fact that we saw Goldie and the Diamondbacks play, and you see them play on a consistent basis. It's hard to catch those guys night in, night out. So, but again, a fantastic congrats to them. I mean, they are both well deserving of the award. Certainly think they will get it over Goldie. I hope Votto gets a serious look. Think he should finish in the top 5 of MVP voting. But we're gonna have it's gonna be a fun one. So, man, great show, great regular season. It's been an absolute blast. The postseason starts tomorrow. Well, heck, it's probably going to be tonight by the time you guys listen to this, because it is 11:15 on the East Coast. So that really is rough for me, because I got to get up early and still haven't had dinner. But hey, you know what? Worth it. Always worth it for a show like this. Guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. Be sure to check us out at OO Left Field on Twitter and Out of Left Field with Graham and Chris on Facebook. Give us a like. Give us a follow. Always want to have your interaction, especially with the offseason coming up soon. We're going to want to hear from you guys what you want to talk about, what your questions are going into next season. Gives us good content for you guys coming down the stretch into next spring training in February. We'll be back next week. Plenty of stuff to get to. Thanks to everybody at the Grueling Truth. Thanks to Chris Ferry for sitting along with me. Happy to be here. I'm Graham McGowan. See you next week on Out of Left Field.